You couldn't have guessed this. The vastly different investment philosophies of Robert Kiyosaki and Grant Cardone seem to have pitted them against each other in different schools of thought, and I think the clip you're about to watch really puts a finger on why that is exactly. That's because this debate on where a new investor should start in the rental real estate market is the perfect place for me to tell you some ways in which the market dynamics have changed in recent years. Keep in mind, this is not financial advice, but subscribe to the channel for more discussions like this, and let's get into it.
And it wasn't until Grant Cardone, we did an interview together where he explained to me that a single family house is not really an asset. It's really a liability. It's only until you get into like 6, 7, 8 unit apartments that really you start having real assets and real businesses and so forth. And it was like, oh, like a light bulb went up, over my head. I rented for many, many years. I just bought a house last year, but I know it's not really an asset or really an investment. It was just something I did to reward myself for all the hard work, in a place where my family could be raised, but it's not really an asset. And you talk about that, how most times your house is a liability.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's not the house, it's anything. The magical, and Grant, he and I have gone head to head with each other. So just to know that. So I don't have much, I don't put much worth in his words. And you can buy apartment houses, but you don't have to buy an apartment house. The reason he says that is because he wants to sell you an apartment house. So I know his MO, and I've gone round and round with him on this one. An asset is very simply something that puts money in your pocket. So think about this. So when people, they make some money to buy a house, but if they stop working, that house starts taking money from their pocket. So it's not an asset. You buy a nice car, the car keeps taking money from your pocket. So it's a liability. You have 3 kids, they're definitely liabilities. Do you know what I mean? So it's nothing to do with apartment houses. And so I think he's he got that idea from me. I know that.
You know what's interesting here? Robert's hidden insinuation that it's Grant Cardone's conflict of interest with his company that makes him shell out the advice he does, but perhaps that misses an important point. It's that Grant is borrowing from the same redefinition that Robert Kiyosaki gave in the 90s of an asset as a cash-flowing entity and adding another layer to it. That layer is of passive income, which Grant Cardone emphasizes a lot as a means of decoupling your time from your money. Now, can you purchase a single-family house and rent it out? Under Robert's real estate philosophy, absolutely. But under Cardone's, he would simply tell you that it's a very active form of income, thus not exactly worthy of being called an asset. I think you see a similar sentiment to Grant Cardone when he calls on people to differentiate between being self-employed versus running a business. Too many people that are self-employed call themselves businessmen, despite the fact that their time is still linked to how much money they make. And as long as it's true, your income is not passive. You don't have an asset that is giving you back your time. If you understand Grant Cardone's idea of rental real estate, you'll see why he almost conceptualizes a single-family unit as being self-employed as a property manager. The average single-family house in the United States right now costs just over $2,000 a month, and that means if you were the landlord, that would barely be enough to supplement your primary source of income on top of the time and effort it would require to manage the property. In other words, it's almost like working an additional job, which is why Grant Cardone would advise someone to leave the property management to the experts. But for Robert Kiyosaki, it seems like passive rental income is not as important as the hands-on experience that people would be getting by personal experience in the market. That's what he's done, and ironically also what Grant Cardone did.
So anyway, it's more than that. So anyway, so I write a book, and I get paid probably several $100,000 a month from my Rich Dad, Poor Dad. My book is an asset. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. So if I buy a car and I lease it to an Uber driver, it could be an asset. It depends on the cash flow.
Yeah.
So it all depends on the financial statement, income, expense, all that stuff. So it's not anything to do with apartment houses. He's trying to sell you an apartment house. I don't recommend it.
Well, I think what he meant was if you have a number of units and people are paying rent,
I understand.
And you actually have a cash flow based on that, which is probably higher than what you put into it. And that's what he means by, an asset in terms of the cash flow of it.
Vlad, I look, he's a smart boy, he's a good salesman. He and I have gone at it because it doesn't have to be an apartment house. He sells apartment houses. He wants to put you in his deals. So that's, to me, that's kind of a promotion, if you know what I mean.
Could be, but there's more arguments on either side than merely chalking it up to personal financial interest. While Grant Cardone's Cardone Capital may be one of the largest real estate institutional investors in the country, perhaps we could take a different perspective and look at his idea from a more historical perspective. There's no arguing the fact that in the last 4 decades, median home prices have risen much faster than the wages have gone up. That has created a widening gap between people's purchasing power and their dream of owning a home. In that case, let's say you've got $400,000 that you need to put to good use. Is it worth buying up the median single-family unit that costs around $426,000? Or is it better to put the money into an institutional multifamily real estate investor like Cardone Capital? That's obviously a decision that needs to be taken after considering several factors, but it looks like the real pro of Cardone Capital is also its con, which is the hands-off investment experience it provides. And since the company almost functions as a stock market where you're buying small shares of a large real estate management firm, you're also getting substantively lower returns since Cardone Capital has to keep its share of the profits. All in all, there's arguments on either side, and I think this is a rivalry that we're going to see pan out as the world of real estate goes through a shift. Grant Cardone himself actually responded to Robert Kiyosaki's words against him by saying this.
Since our last interview, I interviewed Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Robert really likes me.
Well, he said he doesn't agree with your financial advice, and he said I don't put much worth in Grant Cardone's words.
Yeah.
Why do you guys have this kind of disagreement?
I think Robert said in the interview with you, he's like, I've gone toe-to-toe with Cardone many times. The next time you meet him, ask him, how many times has he even met me in person?
How many times has he met you?
0.
Have you guys done an interview or anything?
I did one podcast with him. He's never been toe-to-toe with me. That was a lie. At best, it was an exaggeration, but it's false. It was completely not true. He's never met me. He's never gone toe-to-toe with me. And I've spent maybe 12 minutes with him in an interview.
Okay.
So I don't know what he knows about my business. I don't know what he knows about my advice. I don't know why he would disagree with anything when we haven't even spent any time together.
Well,
I know this. You know.
Go ahead.
Maybe he should do more of what he says and more of what he says. Just do more of what you say, dude. Why don't you own $4 billion worth of real estate?
That's one way to put it, but I think they'll go toe-to-toe even if they don't want to, at least in the eyes of new investors in the market for whom these two real estate moguls represent two different schools of thought. But let me know in the comments what you think, because it's a debate that every real estate investor will need to have before they make their first investment moves in the market.